Good evening and welcome to the October 21st Budget Workshop. There'll be a riveting budget discussion that we'll have.
Riveting?
It will be. It better be, I'll fall asleep. All right,
Set the bar high.
we ready to say the pledge?
Yeah.
We pledgers, so we're on our own. If we can muddle through. Any changes to the agenda?
Unless you want to talk about the 18th now.
No, we can do it next week.
Yes.
Still like several weeks out.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Dose.
Any discussion?
I did it in Spanish, right?
Sorry.
He said dose.
You didn't even do it in Latin, Rick. All right, any discussion?
English.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right,
Extra.
approval of the October 7th public minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are up to our first opportunity for public comment. We have one member in the public. Nothing? All right. And one member online for public? Anything? Going once? Going twice? There is another opportunity later in the meeting, so we'll move on to
It's not very riveting, so.
the riveting stuff. The 1100s.
Well, I'm going to kind of jump in because some of the stuff that I need to update us on are connected to the 1100s, and I'll just continue with my great budget news I've sort of shared all year, I guess, with changes at the state and the federal levels. But before I jump in, Sarah, who's our one participant in the audience, is our one of our new budget committee members. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we have others that I know are going to try to go online or listen to recordings, and all but one book has been picked up thus far. So we are in good shape. So I think everybody will note that the meeting we had on the 7th felt a little different than the typical years because we've been on this either even or a little bit of a climb enrollment-wise in Barrington for several years now. And that has started to change a little bit, so we had to have that related to but separate budget conversation around enrollment and a little bit of a dipping trend, and I wanted to make sure I gave you updated class sizes tonight, so we'll jump into that. And then the second prong to that conversation, of course, is doing the best we can with all of the factors, known and unknown at this point, as those pieces come together to determine a budget that can be as fiscally as responsible as possible, given the increased tax rates we've seen in town over the past couple of years, just sort of the financial strain on, I think, the nation as a whole. So that's kind of our charge. I mean, it is every year, but some years it feels a little bit more critical than others, and I would say this is one of those years. So I just wanted to comment before we jump into enrollment that when we talk about trying to come in with a flat or an even keeled, even 0% budget increase, that I just want to make sure we all are talking about the same thing when we talk about that, because a zero increase really means a deficit, right? Because you can't have you can't meet your contractual obligations without some increase over the current year. So just wanted to throw that out there for people to chew on as we go through this conversation. So one of the pieces of paper you have in front of you is a very slight change in the enrollment current, which then impacts projections from last year. So it's the chart, separate handout, not in the book. Did it today to make sure it was hot off the presses. So kindergarten went up a couple kiddos. There was a grade level who went down one, others that went up one. So just wanted to make sure that we had per policy and class sizes as accurate as we can as we go through these conversations. So if you look far right, that is with some of the potential classroom adjustments that we talked about at the last meeting, and so those class sizes are all based on 5 teachers at every grade level. And right now, in the left-hand column, we have 6 teachers at kindergarten, 1st and 4th. So the class size in the right-hand column is with 5 K through 4. So you can see that they hover around that best practice number of 18 per classroom, which is what our current policy says. And then 18 at the kindergarten level, and then 22 1st through 4 is the actual policy class size, with best practice at K to 3 being 18 or less. So not a huge change, but just wanted you to have as accurate of information as you could there. So let's see, what else do I want to update you on before we jump into some other things here? So to me, when I'm thinking about keeping the budget as flat as possible, the number I have in my head is default, because there are certain things that go forward in a default budget and certain things that don't. So reminder that transportation and food service are 2 of those items that are not included in a default, and this year they're a little lower than typical. So combined, we're looking at about $80,000 for the 2. And then also any employee who is not protected by a union collective bargaining agreement, then increases for those hourly and salaried folks would not be included in a default budget either. I think we're all following the healthcare insurance costs very closely. I did attend what they called a town meeting, like pre-school care annual meeting last Friday, I think it was. And it was frustrating for those of us who were on the call, because they would not give us a range that was any tighter than 8 to 35% of an increase. They said they think on average it'll be more like 17. And for those of you who've been around a while, you know that we typically put 10% in as an increase, and it most often is lower than that, and we are happy because then the bottom line of the budget goes down. I actually had to slink into Vicky's office and say, I need you to raise it. So obviously there's general increases, but then there's also increases based on your actual usage and your claims. So I suspect that we will be at that 17% average or even higher. So I did have, right now in the proposed, there's a 20% increase in there. So I think we will all be celebrating. If that number does go down and changes, we'll know the first week of November where we stand. So that is atypical. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well. The other piece of uncertainty are our grant funds. I will say that it wouldn't surprise me if we lost a couple of them. Title II is staff development. Title IV is very targeted technology grant information. IDEA, which is special education, and Title I. There aren't a lot of people left working in those offices at the federal level. However, it would be shocking to me if we pulled those funds back from, the 95% plus students who access, education and public education across the nation. So I do think we do have to be prepared, though, with an option in case those grants do go away or in case they're not funded in the appropriate time frame. So there's that piece, and there is a solution, a few different solutions for that we'll talk about tonight. And then also there was the New Hampshire Supreme Court decision that happened on Friday around open enrollment, which is interesting. So we did receive some clarification on it this morning. I mentioned previously we're now required to have a line item in the budget for open enrollment, but nobody has said with X amount of dollars in it. We have no cause if a student were to ask to go to an open enrollment school, there's only one in the state right now, by the way, Prospect Mountain High School, we can't say no thank you, we don't want to pay that bill. So right now, the statute reads that we would have to pay 80% of our per pupil cost to the receiving district. For us, that's about $16,000. In addition to that, we would be responsible for the progress of and the financial responsibility for the services attached to a student if they were to go their special education services. So that'll be interesting how that all unfolds, and we'll just keep tabs on it. So we will have to decide in this process somewhere if we, the budget process, if we want to put an amount of money in there to cover X number of seats if students do choose to go, but we won't know what other districts are doing from they now want to be a receiving open enrollment school. Those would go out on warrants this year, or the legislation will change for next year. So it's just another one of those kind of frustrating, uncertain, how do you budget for something when you don't have all the answers? So there's actually 5 different overall, so after we met on the 7th and we talked about enrollment and positions, and then the board had said to Vicki, how hard will it be to create more than one proposed? And so what we did, that's what this little looks like timeline is put together 5 different overall options. So I'm gonna kind of just share the options, and then we can go into the actual line items where these things show up. So the default budget is a 3.32 increase over the current operating budget, which is about $377,000. So I'll list out what comprises that 377 for you in a minute. The 443 on the far right of the spectrum, the 4.43 increase, is a proposed with all current staffing levels, including the assumption that the grants remain fully funded, meaning that the positions that are currently funded by the grant remain in the grant, right? So kind of a status quo, everything remains the same. Another way to look at that is the same 4.43 increase. If we adjusted staffing levels based on enrollment, we could then take all of the grant-funded positions and put them in the general fund operating budget and stay at about a 4.43 increase. There'd be some money left over there because one is a teaching position and one's a tutoring position, so it would actually be a little bit lower than that. But I just wanted to give you another option to consider and chew on.
When do you typically know if them grants are gonna be funded or not?
Way after the budget's passed.
We don't get
They don't
grant,
care about our budget timeline.
I
we
figured
don't
that.
get grant allocations until usually the 3rd to the 4th week of June. So a lot of this feels like we're rolling the dice a little bit. And budgeting for public schools is challenging anyway because it's so many months out. But this feels really difficult.
Deanna, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So looking at the 3.32 and the 4.43.
Yep.
The default would include all current staffing levels and positions in the grant. So is that additional 1 point, whatever, just salary increases due to the contract?
Yeah, I can go through a quick list for you right now. So it is food service and transportation, which is about 80,000. It is
Right, but those would be the same in both these scenarios.
yes.
So I'm wondering why, what's the difference between here and here?
Well,
But if this is current staffing, default would be current staffing.
The default doesn't have transportation and food service in it though.
But they wouldn't in this one either.
Yeah, in our proposed, we put it in there.
Okay,
The proposed, we would always have our contractual increases.
okay.
You can't put transportation in because you didn't put it to the voters to
Exactly.
decide.
Right.
Right, so because we didn't put food service or transportation out on a warrant, because you're required to provide them, and so if the warrants didn't pass, then you'd be in a world of hurt.
Yep.
So because they didn't go out on a separate warrant, you can't then put the year-to-year increases in your default. So other things that are in the proposed, but not the default, obviously, would be technology fee increases. We added 6% for licenses and software subscriptions, added a 6% for general supply lines, coursework for administrators. We think we've discovered over the last couple of years that there's not a separate line item in there for those contractual obligations. We have a curriculum increase of about 117,000 from this current year to next, and we just put in a 1-year cost proposal for the ELA curriculum. And then, like I mentioned before, non-union and hourly employee increases are also not in the default. So those are the big picture items that are in that proposed with current staffing levels, but are not in the default. Does that help? And then, not that I would recommend this, but an extremely aggressive approach would be the about 3% increase lower than default, which would mean we're going with the assumption that all the grants are going to stay intact, those positions would stay in the grant, and then we would also make the 4 position adjustments due to decreased enrollment. So that's a lot to absorb. So there's going to be a lot of questions as we go through it, but that is a big picture way of looking at 5 different pathways to the budget. So part of why the binder is so small this year is, we've painted the picture for the last 3 to 4 years of the things that we need as a district and as each building, staff-wise and material and curriculum-wise, to meet our goals. And the community has been amazing and gracious, like they always have been. However, we're really this year trying to be as conservative as we can.
To be clear, a 4-position adjustment means a 4-position reduction.
Correct.
Okay, let's not hide behind, right? Like, people
Yeah.
are gonna see right through that and say that's a
Yeah, we
candy way of saying, we're not hiding behind it. That's, if we have,
No, it's-
we don't have enough
yeah.
kids to have that many teachers, is what it is. It's not that we don't want to have more teachers. It's
correct.
just-
Yeah, that was.
Do you anticipate that there'll be attrition through retirements or people moving on if we went that route and took them 4 teachers out?
There, to my knowledge, I don't know of any currently. There was 1, possibly 2, who were considering, and people have changed their minds. They have until December 1 to notify.
Okay.
So I know that there's most likely a para or 2 who may retire, but I have nothing official at
Right.
this point. So. Yeah, so another, in that same line of thinking, Rick, so that's what a lot of districts do, bigger, that often deal with fluctuating enrollment, is they look at upcoming retirements and attrition, but also sometimes early retirement incentives are offered so that people can kind of own the choice, as opposed to younger teachers or new to the district teachers losing their jobs unexpectedly. So something we can certainly
Look at, yeah.
look at as we get a little closer and potentially make those decisions.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. So usually we would go through kind of the 1100s line by line, but truthfully, those are the only areas of increase, except for, so Emily has a page under the curriculum tab, and then Elizabeth has a page around music and band responsibilities, because over the last couple of years, as we have added stipended positions for curriculum committee work, and have updated the teacher contract to be more explicit about after-hours commitments, that those two positions, those programs, I guess I would say, not positions, do have a list of responsibilities or commitments that they fulfill in order to grow their program. So we just wanted to share what that looked like and provide a cleaner picture of what those programs currently do. Elizabeth, do you want to just give a quick
Sure.
overview of each of them?
Yeah, so we're kind of rebranding the job description for both band teacher and chorus teacher to include like an additional outlining of expectations as a band director and a chorus director as well. So where, you know, the community and the program, we've kind of built these expectations that there's going to be no less than 3 concerts a year. You know, the chorus is going to perform at the soiree, where our band will perform in the Memorial Day parade. There's just several responsibilities, including 10-hour day-long festivals for both of those people that have become a natural part of the job that's really benefiting the program and the students, but it's a pretty significant increase in hours that are outside of the contractual hours and expectations for other positions. So we've just really kind of pulled those out, stated what it is, so that in the case that, you know, one of these teachers leaves, then that expectation for this position is stated as part of it. There still is the stipend for troublemakers, which is the additional chorus and jazz band as well. But the description of band director and chorus director is now more tied to that, you know, traditional band teacher responsibility or chorus teacher.
So our hope would then be to bring the job description back to policy committee and revamp that in order to include these additional, or I guess they're not additional, they're just now
Expectations.
defined expectations as part of the job description. It's amazing and fantastic that they participate in the Memorial Day Parade and the soiree and go to, you know, high school games and pep band rallies and things. But they do it really on their own time at this point. And we added up the hours and looked at, had a conversation around, you know, is this a stipended position, or is this more an extension of their professional responsibilities? And should be looked more at, not a spot-on per diem rate, because the who could change, but something more comparable to, you know, what a master's level educator would make. So like I said, it's not a to the minute, hour by the hour compensation package, but we thought it was a place to start, a reasonably fair, you know, rate based on, so a mid-level master's hourly rate is like $54 an hour, somewhere around that. And so that was how we based it.
Do they get a stipend now?
For things that aren't included in these hours breakdowns. So they happen to, one of them happens to do jazz band, but those hours are completely separate from this, and arguably somebody else could do jazz band. It would be hard for somebody else that wasn't running the band program to not do these other things.
So currently, when they do, I'll just pick the Memorial Day Parade, when they're doing these, what I'll call extracurricular activities, they're not getting paid at all for them now? That doesn't seem right.
Do we know what the additional, are you asking for an additional stipend for it, or is it, oh, okay, what's the total
It
One
was,
amount?
the band director was 1,500 and chorus was 1,000.
Yeah. Did we lose those
this
amounts
co-
somewhere?
Yeah, it's not listed here. Is that currently,
Sorry.
that's okay. Is it currently covered within the stipend fund that you have, or is
No,
this why
we-
you're asking, it's above and beyond?
So it's not, I think we would have the money because we don't have all the current stipend positions filled, but we were viewing it as more of an extension of professional responsibilities and wanting to roll it into their job descriptions.
Okay.
And yes, it would still be paid out as a lump sum, but not in the list of stipends because it's
It
part
wouldn't
of the program.
Okay, so
Right.
it wouldn't come out of the existing stipend line,
Right.
is what you're saying? Oh, okay,
So we would add to the salary lines
okay,
these additional responsibilities and the money attached to it.
okay.
Does it not make more sense to do it as a stipend as opposed to adding it to the salary? So then you wouldn't, it wouldn't get into negotiations or
Precedent setting.
professional,
So stipends actually are an item within the current collective bargaining agreement. And so by putting it in the stipend list, then it pulls it into the whole stipend committee, which
Okay.
is, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing.
Yep.
But the distinction in my mind is, you know, pretty much anybody is eligible to say, hey, I want to do this club or this activity, and those are all things listed on the stipend list where,
I guess my question would be is that would, by taking $1,500 and putting it in the band director's salary line, would that potentially create a problem with the union who would file a grievance against the district for that?
it would still, I mean, stipends are salary.
Okay.
So they add on to your sort of overall salary at the end of the year anyway.
I guess I would look at this as it should be a stipend because none of these things listed are required for the band director, right? Like
Right.
if something extra, they have kids who are interested in doing it, like, you know, because I can see there's some taxpayers saying, why are we paying for them to go play at Co-Brown or Dover High, the Mountain, like, so those are things, I see that as more similar to clubs where kids have an interest and they want to do it rather than this is a requirement for the band director.
My concern would be, again, just precedent setting that, like, this isn't traditionally how we make these adjustments. And so, because I actually fully agree with that. I hope that my tone doesn't sound like I'm disagreeing with the thought process at all. These individuals work incredibly hard, and I do know they do give up a lot of time that they're currently not paid for, and they do it out of passion and love. And I just want us to be consistent with how we're making decisions for stipends or anything that's above and beyond that's now becoming part of the expectations. We should continue to be making decisions the same way, just so that
Sure.
in the future someone can't say, well, the BMS music directors were handled differently. Why is another UA at a different building not being handled the
Yep,
same
that
way?
makes sense.
That's just from a fairness standpoint, not because I don't believe they deserve it. So I'm not saying I disagree with it. Can we keep it consistent?
Yeah.
That's all.
I'm kind of on this, that's kind of where I was headed
Sure.
with it, was more in that line of, I don't think they should be doing it for free, and I'm not opposed to the $1,500 stipend, but I believe it ought to be a stipend rather than added to their salary.
And I think it, like, you know, should reflect, like, you know, say some year they don't do 2 band performances at Co-Brown or I don't know, there's a blizzard and there's no marching band concert, or like, you know, then that, you know, should be
Soiree
reflected
was
as.
snowed out.
Never.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
the flip side of the coin is what happens, all right, we make it a stipend, right? That's like, okay, Garth wants to run the Lego Club, so he's signing up to run the Lego Club and he's gonna get a small stipend for doing that. What happens if one year, whomever, all of our music people, as Carrie just said, are amazing. Someone says, I don't wanna do the marching band at the Memorial Day Parade, so it's not in my job description, I'm not doing it. Screw you.
So I guess that's part of when Elizabeth and I met, why.
Is
we
putting it in the job
were-
description.
Why we were wanting to say, you know what, this is important to the growth and the longevity of the program.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make it part of the just job description. And when you're interviewing and hiring, you want to be able to share that,
Yeah.
you know, in the process, as opposed to, this is a stipend we'd love for you to do. You know, we would hate to see those things go away.
But could you, I guess my question, along with God's line of thinking, is that you, in order to receive that stipend, you have to do these things. And if you decide to handpick 2 or 3 of them and not do the rest of them, you just won't get the stipend. Pay
Or
it
if
afterwards.
things change, I mean, we
Right.
don't know
Yeah, yeah.
if these things will be going on forever. not forever, I know
Right.
job descriptions can be updated as well, but just
I
tying
mean,
them
we
together.
prorate other committee work based on if somebody, you know, there's 10 meetings, but they can't make 3 of them. Like, we have it in those stipend contracts now that if you miss more than X number of meetings, your stipend may be prorated. So that could certainly be part of the wording, that if any of these activities don't take place, then we would adjust based on this amount per hour, or however we want to word it. Because you're right, there were years that some groups didn't do the soiree, or, you know, different factors. So these were just the things that have consistently happened for many years. I just thought it was time to, for short money and a tough
I think
budget
that's-
cycle, it was time to bring it up and get it more in line.
I think putting in the stipend line is more than acceptable. And maybe, you know, but I think you should also look across buildings, because I do know, at least even the soiree, you do have an elementary school group that shows up, and you do have well, every year except for this year, an ECLC group that shows up. So,
Didn't sound bitter at all.
That's part of what I think we're getting at is, you know, we're asking people to do things outside of their contract, and people don't want to do it, and then in the case of the ECLC, it's like, you know, I can't make teachers want to do it, because it's in nobody's job description or expectations that they take a group of 20 kids to the soiree and
absolutely.
sing,
So that would make, maybe incentivize somebody to do that. That'd be cool.
I think in the job description, you can also mention, like, there are these other alternative activities that are encouraged and are, you know, paid additionally to participate in, so that, you know, it's not like we're tricking them in any way. It's
yeah.
transparent. It's like, yeah, we'd like you to do these things.
I think it was more a matter of just having the conversation and a mechanism to document it, and not have these things that we know really benefit our community and make us who we are go by the wayside.
And make the schools appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, you know, so.
So in that vein, then I will, so it sounds like people are agreeable to increasing the stipend amount, and then I will just funnel the process back through the stipend committee for a next year, or maybe a prorated this year stipend, and see where that lands.
That'd be awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, let's try to do a prorated
Yeah, I agree
stipend for
with that.
this year.
Yeah.
We strongly suggest prorated.
If they move the November 18th concert. If they move a concert, I'm joking.
I think
I tried.
We're gonna discuss that meeting at the next meeting.
Garth can
By the
joke,
way,
but I
JV did
can't.
win.
I get it.
Nice.
Yes,
you got the update. It's exciting.
Just throwing that in there. Woohoo!
JV volleyball, everyone did win.
Yay.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Excited. All right.
Onto the
Emily, do you want to do a
banner
quick
line item.
recap of the curriculum piece? So Janelle, she was able to make some adjustments here, some cost savings, as well as the expenditure that has to happen.
Sure, so I think some things this year have just come in below where we expected them to be. Some things maybe weren't budgeted quite correctly as far as kind of what we needed for which grade levels and where. So Bridget had done a lot of work before I arrived and just sort of looking at all of the digital curriculum that we're using throughout the district. So that sort of ballooned here and everywhere because of COVID. There were things that were free. There were things that we could get for 3 to 5 years. So we had pockets of things everywhere with maybe some people using them and not others. So in just starting to look at that, and that work is not done, and some of that COVID funding will sort of sunset this year on programs that we bought for 3 or 4 years, there were things that we no longer really were using and did not make sense to pay for this year. So, and just kind of having those conversations, when we looked at rolling over what we're currently doing, there are things that we eliminated. So even, you know, that we're adding in the ELA, which would be a large cost, we're able to eliminate almost $27,000 from just things that are no longer as effective or maybe weren't being used at certain grade levels by enough people to really have that matter. And so then the big question will be sort of ELA, what do we choose to do? Which program, what is their cost, and then what grades do we choose to do? So we are required to do K through 5. It certainly would make sense from a learning and curriculum perspective to be able to do K through 8. So we're not saying to those 3 grades, you don't have an evidence-based program, but we also understand that budgetarily, that may not be the case. It does generally turn out that the elementary programs are far more expensive, and the add-on to add the other grades are really not that much. More of theirs is digital, Whereas when you're looking at your K through 5, there's going to be a lot of physical books in hand, which is just going to cost more money. So a lot of the programs don't go K through 8, so you're potentially looking at different programs. But one of the ones that they piloted last year, their K through 5 estimate was $114,000. Their K through 8 was $125,000. So just an extra 11 for those other grades. So it will just really depend on what we choose and where we land. The other component of that is we do have money in here for things like Haggerty that maybe if we had a program that we may not need that. There are definitely some programs that we still need to add that layer on, but we may be able to remove, foundations. We may be able to remove Haggerty. It will just sort of depend on what we choose and kind of how effective that is with that early kind of phonemic awareness piece. And then, I think just maybe in the process as to where we are with that ELA committee. So there are small groups meeting over the next 2 weeks to really kind of narrow that program list and relook at programs. And then the full group will start in the next month to really narrow down to kind of less than 5 to really dive into and start to look at a couple that we think will be best for us. So the 2 that were piloted last year, there's one of those that's still potentially in the running, and there's one that we seem to have eliminated. We also would like to look at additional programs, and programs have come up with updates. So something that maybe we have looked at in the past and felt like did not meet our needs, those programs have made some updates, and now they might be something that we would be more interested in considering. So we're going to take a look at that, and then as soon as we're able to do due diligence, we'll come back with kind of what that actual cost would be for the programs.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
Anything else for 1100s?
Just a question. I noticed that on a couple of the lines for substitute teaching, like we vastly overspent them this year, but then you budgeted for the coming year back down to like the low level again. What was the thinking behind
We
that?
had some medical,
And just, we're not anticipating a repeat of last year, is what you're saying?
I hope not.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that you either have a medical or a maternity leave, I
Yep.
guess they're kind of one and the same, but that you just absorb
Yep.
as the year goes on. I feel like the sublines, year to year, are kind of all over the place.
Okay.
It actually may be worth we can look back and do like a 5-year average and just make sure that we're as close as we can be.
Sure.
But that was, remember when we looked at attendance, staff attendance, and then once we took out the sort of outlier, so who had particular reasons for being out, that there really wasn't the extreme concern that we had when we looked at it big picture. So a lot of that was necessary leaves.
And then on special ed materials and stuff like that, it looked like a lot of those were way underspent. But then we just budgeted the same again. What's the thinking there?
Well, okay, he's probably not prepared to jump into special ed.
I can jump into that.
That's a next week.
I just saw it,
conversation.
I'm sorry.
But no, that's a good, I'd rather hear it now so we can dig into it before next week,
Okay.
so.
Do you want me to answer it? Or
No, I'll leave a cliffhanger.
I mean, I will say, generally speaking, we thought the budget was much higher than we landed last year, and we were trying not to spend, and so we knew there were some lines that were overspent, that were like, hey, it's
Okay.
March, you don't need to buy markers right now if you already have markers, let's, offset one line with another. So
Thank you.
Probably I just took your cliffhanger, but, that's.
Tease it out.
Not
tease
it, but
All right.
Whoa! Whoa!
Stay tuned.
Riveting.
We're asked for an exciting meeting.
You asked for an exciting meeting.
Oh, so you
She wouldn't fall asleep.
That's right.
Riveting.
I forgot. Riveting.
Riveting.
Are you all on your seats now, on the edge of your seats now? All right. So anything else for 1100s? All right, co-curricular. We don't seem to have a tab, so.
No, I mean, other than the changes to the band director stipend music, we didn't have any other changes in co-curriculars.
Facilities.
Yep, so with the facilities, we've been able to lock in with our cleaning services at the budgeted contracted price right now until 2029 with them. So that's a pretty good thing for 3 years. Our water testing has gone up in that line there, and that's that $1,900 that we're gonna be using to test the number 3 well over at BMS for the second wind water. Electricity has gone up. We did a 6% increase on that due to the supply has changed on that. I've been working with Access, and we've gone from, our old contract was 8 cents per kilowatt. It's jumping to 10 right now. So that's gonna be our difference that we see there. And then gasoline, I know we've talked about using the town and stuff like that. We did take our mowers to be serviced and everything like that because they were skipping and doing everything else that they're not supposed to do. And we were finding water in the tank. So we've decided if it's to get $1,000 in that line to go down to Sunoco and purchase the high test for that. And we were gonna go back to mobile, but with mobile, we figured that they have a monthly charge that they charge us whether we use that.
I'm sorry. Have you considered purchasing ethanol-free gas for these things? I know it's a little ways out of the way. I mean, you can get out of Hampton to the airfield and get ethanol-free gas. And for my personal stuff, I go up to Ossipee.
Yeah, we have it right in Wakefield.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm running all of my stuff.
I just think that when you look at the amount of money it costs to have small engines repaired right now, and the bigger issue is finding somebody that can do it for you in a timely manner, because it seems like there's more work than there are small engine repair people that, while you're spending a little bit more money for ethanol-free gas, I think in the long run, you're gonna save on repair, so.
The ethanol-free is about the same price as diesel, so $4, $4.49 a gallon. And, I mean,
when I was at the fire department, I had 5 gallon cans, and one of my guys would take off, and one of the volunteers, he'd take off and go fill the 5 gallon buckets all at the same time, so.
did they let you guys set up an account down there, or was that just?
No,
something you went down?
I gave him the credit card and just,
Yeah, okay.
but I think it's something worth looking at, is that, I think going with the ethanol, some of the reason you're getting water in your tanks and stuff is because of the ethanol in the fuel.
Yeah, being outside and condensation too is another, but, yeah, I have no problem with that, either way.
Just, like I said, I think while you spend a little bit more on the fuel, you get a better quality fuel, you're probably gonna save on repairs, but more importantly is not having a piece of equipment down when you might need it the most.
Yeah, that's the big part. And then the security alarm monitoring, the increases that is because of UNH no longer covers the area here. UNH used to be free. Rick knows all about that. We did that together. So, those are.
How much was that? I didn't see, I'm sorry. How much was the increase?
300, I just asked the same question.
Yeah, 63. So, and that is all I have for increases. Other than that, everything's staying the same.
And then the water testing was because prior we just were testing the aggregate of the 3 coming together, and now we have to test the separate one by itself? Is that?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
I had a question about the long-range planning, or are you gonna go over that? Sorry, I just realized I just jumped ahead.
Yep, nope, we can go over that next.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Sorry, it sounded
Nope.
like we were
Nope.
done this section, so I was like, asking.
we're done with that
Nope,
there
pretend
now.
I didn't ask. I bet you're gonna already speak to it, so.
Can we jump in there?
Sure.
So last year, we had talked about all the projects long-term. It is the second to the last page in the facilities tab. So we met with EMC, they have done their, and they'll come to a meeting once we get past the workshop pieces of this, more into November. Well, they will overall share what they did basically an overall assessment of the district. Buildings, infrastructure, boiler rooms, like all the things. So, and they're the ones working on the generator project right now for BMS. So they categorized their things as priority 1, 2, and 3 and had similar year ranges. And so in order to make sure we are looking at the same thing, figured it made sense to adjust the capital reserve long-range planning so that we're comparing apples to apples. What Joe and I did, though, is took out any items that EMC had listed that were things that would be add-ons to bigger projects that would give us like rebates and, electricity usage cost savings and things like that versus a need from a building repair and upkeep. So when you bundle a bigger project, a lot of times you get these additional, upgrade your LED lighting because you're gonna get this kickback from Eversource and you end up saving money, but you wouldn't choose to do that, as its own project because it's not a need right now, like that system isn't failing. So we wanted to make sure in the capital reserve long-range planning document that we considered those items that we know that we have to keep up with, otherwise we're gonna have facilities that are gonna start to be in disrepair. So we were able to remove and update a lot of items that were question marks from last year and move them down, like, for example, the generator and the FEMA grant and the banks of windows at BMS are on a monitor status currently. And then we updated the seal coating, the boiler room, and generators, exterior doors and things up ahead. So prior, the prediction was that we would need about $250,000 each year to keep the facility capital reserve healthy at the end of all these projects, with some preventative maintenance, creative thoughts that Joe has done with seal coating and different roof repairs. We've been able to extended the life of parking lots as well as roofs, which are two of our more expensive things. And it's no surprise that, like the boiler room at BMS, right, we've paid off the bond, the building's getting older, so some of these systems we need to get out ahead of. We've learned our lesson, I think, with things that we can't get certain parts and panels and, repair certain items. So these are the priorities that we already had in the queue, but also are in line with what EMC found when they came and did the audit of the district. So the good news is we cut it down from a 9 or 10 year lookout to a 6-year lookout, and we're looking at about $200,000 for a capital reserve on a warrant each year as opposed to $250,000. So a little more conservative, and we will still be able to keep the balance healthy when all is said and done. And of course, as we know, year to year, when something happens or we end up doing one project versus another, these things, shift slightly.
So you're proposing to reduce a warrant article from 250 to 200,000? Is that what you're proposing?
So in last year, we had said we would need at least $250 a year to
Yep.
make sure we could fulfill all of these projects, and we've re-looked at the length of time that we have in order to do some of these repairs, and would need less each year.
And we fund we ask the voters to fund that out of surplus?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so not additional tax,
So where I'm going with this is, while I appreciate that you're trying to bring that down a little bit, I still think the way that the price of stuff is so all over the board that all of a sudden your $675,000 for the BMS boiler room is $200,000 short to do what you want to do, because I just think it's short-sighted to try to reduce that. I prefer to write the warrant article in such a way that, maybe it says up to 250,000. So if you have a year where you're only able to put 150,000 in, so be it. But if there's 250 there, I just, again, I appreciate keeping it as close as you can, but I think with the price of, until the price of stuff starts to level off a little bit, I think it's short-sighted to reduce that.
So right now, we have $1.5 million in there.
Yep.
And so the larger ticket items are in the priority 1, 0 to 2 year mark. So, you know, each year during this process, we can choose to change that number. So whatever you all are comfortable with or suggest that warrant be for this year, that's how we'll write it.
In the past, was it 250,000 or nothing?
That was high for us.
No, but what I'm saying is without having the warrant article to look at, was it written that if there's not 250,000 in surplus, nothing went in there? Is that how that was written?
I have to go back and look.
I think it was up to.
Yeah, I think it is an up to
Okay.
that way with whatever you're
maybe we should, I'm just old. Yeah, then,
Well, no, we did use BMS because of this parking lot repair
yep,
several years ago.
that's what I'm thinking of.
But it was, it's not ideal.
The
Because
furniture's too big for the
little
little people.
bodies in big classrooms and furniture.
Scary.
Well, it just caused a lot of work for facilities, having to move full preschool, materials and equipment and furniture over to recreate a preschool classroom in a middle school classroom size.
I guess my thinking is if the temperatures are getting warmer later in the year and it's getting us to be uncomfortable and the learning experience is deteriorating for whatever reason, keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
God
we
bless
got
you.
lucky last year, but we have certainly had years where, and even this year at the start of the year, we didn't have a bunch of really terrible,
Yeah.
early school year days, but we certainly have all lived through them.
But I think that's something we have to consider, even if it's looking at putting money away, extra money away to within eye toward getting climate control into the buildings.
I would actually want to poke at EEMC to talk about, oh gosh, what are they called now? I've been in a lot of school buildings where they put the units on the roof that aren't air conditioning, but they pull the humidity out of
Yep,
the air.
that's what we have in Dover.
And they make a huge difference.
difference.
And you're not spending all that money
Yeah.
on electricity and, the cooling and the breakdowns and, so I don't know what they cost, but, it's.
Climate
Chillers.
control. it's
Yeah,
called.
it's pretty significant. So if we do get to a point where we're doing the boiler room and we're gonna put together a bigger project, it would be great to then look at how can we get some energy efficiency or kickbacks on some of these other.
This is the only
projects.
time you're ever going to hear me say this, but right now I miss Dave Toddy. He gave us a wonderful tour of the Oyster Rivers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the building.
I didn't understand half of what it was when he pointed it out, but it looked beautiful.
That boiler
And-
room is
Yeah,
like
it-
state of the art.
Yeah, it was amazing.
like
I
NASA.
don't even know what all this stuff does. Yeah, it was like.
So it would be worth going and looking, so it's been,
Geothermal, yeah.
15 years now, but when Stratford filled in their courtyard and did their addition, they put the dehumidifying units up, so we could look at, not only like longevity-wise, how have they held up for them over 15 years, but then we know we've got our Oyster River neighbors with brand-new equipment.
So you're proposing getting rid of the courtyard of the elementary school,
I am
putting air
not.
handlers in there?
No, as a matter
Make sure that's in the minutes.
I thought,
Get that on Barrington Connections.
I thought I heard the same thing you did.
I'm taking down all the maple trees too.
And while you're striking that, strike the I miss Dave Toddy part too.
Noted. Yeah.
I want that bold, italicized, highlighted.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the architects, one of their initial conversations, if we were to need an expansion, was, oh, look, you
Oh,
have
yeah.
all this great space.
Yeah,
And we were
we're
like,
like, no, it's the garden.
You can't.
Movie night.
Well, not only that, but we have all kinds of Eagle Scout projects in
Yeah.
there.
There's 3 different
and
Eagle Scout
it-
projects in that courtyard.
Yeah, like,
I hope I don't happen to see
Laura
on
worked very hard to
Barrington
get those Eagle Scouts
Connections, I
to the
miss
district.
Dave Toddy, God's fence underneath.
So,
All right, I have a question about the default budget, because at the start, you talked about anyone who wasn't under contract didn't have increases in there. And I see that's true for the secretaries and the custodians, but it looks like all the admin have increases in the default budget.
explain that, because you are right. It does look that way.
Because they're lumped into one line when we did the budget for this year. They're lumped into one line. I had to move them out to where they really belonged. That's why there's a difference. So what you're seeing in the default is what they're making this year.
Okay.
It is, you are spot
I
on.
took it from one line and I had to put it to where each
Okay.
person belongs.
Okay.
It's a shortcoming of the system, and it looks as though everybody's getting increases, but they are their current year's salaries.
Okay.
I had a little heart attack earlier and went to find you, but you were doing something, but I clarified it in my own head, so
Okay.
I'm not surprised that came up. I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be so upset, she's gonna have to run all new proposed budgets.
Noted in the comments, though.
Can we add that to
Yeah,
the comments?
it's gonna come up, it's
Yeah.
gonna come up in the, yeah.
As it should, yeah, because it does look like, we can't put those
It was
increases
highlighted
in the
in my-
default.
So you're next, I was gonna ask after. I was gonna answer after.
I just figured we should, Scott's online, so
Way to go.
you could hear it.
Good choice.
Anything else from anybody for the budget?
Could you, if the rest of the board's okay with it, could you put a document together on, should the board move in the direction of staff reduction? What kind of a recommendation you might have for an early buyout for teachers?
Sure.
And so that we could put some numbers dollar-wise to that type of thing. Do you guys think that's reasonable information to have? Thank
Certainly
you.
worth exploring.
I also meant to do it when we were talking about, but then we got into a good flow. Just wanted to give the principals an opportunity to discuss it for those that would be experiencing the reduction. I think it's important, especially since first you come to the meetings and you don't always often get asked to speak, but in my history, we've never needed to propose this and discuss it. I would hate to not give you the floor. You also don't have to take it. It's okay to say no. Just wanted to give you the chance. You're welcome.
I don't know that they're thanking you, but no.
As a taxpayer and whatnot, I'm certainly mindful of the dollar amounts, but I think it's a strategic investment in the long term for student success to take advantage of sort of the window of opportunity we have with early learners, and I would include first grade in that, and keep those class sizes more to the minimum. I think the latest research is 13 to 17 is considered on the smaller size. So if you look at those numbers, kindergarten, if you were looking, so with 85 students in 6 classes, so you're looking at 14, you're going to be at that 17 mark, right? So if we get 10 more students, we're now looking to be considered not small, but a larger class size. So I just think, smaller class sizes, like your academic achievement, it's just a numbers thing, right? You're gonna have teachers gonna have more time to spend individually with students, and I think at the younger ages, that's just how they learn. Assessments are all one-on-one, whether it's foundations assessment, their reveal assessments. You just can't do as much group, large group in the younger grades. I think there's advantages there. I think kids, socially and emotionally, the younger kids need more, more attention, and you're able to do it when you have less kids. Right? It just sort of makes sense that, they just have strong relationships with their teachers. It reduces behavioral challenges. We've talked about that by having those smaller numbers. And the other thing I think about is teacher retention, right? It's a hard job, as you know, and finding teachers is getting harder and harder. So I feel that if you're going to, it's just going to make the job harder, right? In terms of teacher job satisfaction and retaining teachers, having a class size of 14, 15, is just going to make them happier than a class size of 17 or more. I'm not saying we want we're going to make teachers happy, but we do want happy teachers, because then they're going to put in the hard work and work for students. So, and I think it's good for families as well, because again, it's kind of a numbers thing, right? Like if I have a class of 18, it's the number of conferences, the number of emails. I'm going to do all that hard work, but if I have 15 or 16 or 14, I'm better able to communicate with families, to connect with families, to connect with kids, and I think the research is pretty clear that the more we do when they're younger, the benefits, the investment is going to pay itself. Certainly at the elementary and the middle bit in high school, and the research that says that what we're doing in the early grades is impacting students' life in college and work and whatnot. So.
Well, numbers don't always
Glad
equate
you asked.
need, right? Right? We're talking about numbers in the chair, but not about need, right? Because that's not something you can track. So, yeah, thank
So
you.
you can look at the cost, and you can pay in the early years, and sometimes that money that you're, the savings may not be a savings if you have to invest later in students' education.
I happen to agree with you, yes.
Ditto.
Thank you. Do you want a motion?
We need to go to public
Oh,
comment.
sorry, yes.
All right, anyone online? Going once, going twice. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Let's try and keep doing
Thank you,
it.
everybody.
Thank you.